rotting driftwood on the foreign shores, spilling out into the ocean floor, and the memories all you've left without a trace. Paralyzed with the thoughts receding, current sweeps you with the silent bleeding through the heart into the darkest place. Well, turn around, there's nothing to see here. Run away, no reason to be here. It's the ghost who never goes away. Turn around and leave this behind now. You see the ground as it bleeds in the sky now. You fight the sea, you're always gonna drown. All the secrets that you're holding, all the memories you hide, all the frail thoughts that echo in the corners of your mind, they won't even last a moment. They will soon be swept away when the ocean takes you in its arms and carries you away. You carry all your burdens on the cross around your neck. You take whatever's left that you could salvage from the wreck, and the haunted past will follow you like a lost dog on the beach, nipping at your trail till you've drifted out of reach. Yeah, turn around, there's nothing to see here. Run away, no reason to be here. It's the ghost who never goes away. Turn around and leave this behind now. See the ground as it bleeds to the sky now. You fight the sea, you're always gonna drown. In the broken line horizon, in the castles made of sand, you tried to hold it in your hands, you tried to understand it. The ocean asks the questions, and it holds the answers too. It dissolves away the lies about the things you thought you knew.
Hello Internet! What's up? I hope you liked our new intro video. So yeah, today's session is going to be a little bit weird. So hopefully you all are in the chat and ready to help out, because this is going to be an adventure. I think. So what's up? I'm Andi. I play in Tales from Zero as Verity, the charmingest, most cinnamon roll rogue to ever cinnamon roll. And I also run our River of Terrycell campaign. on top of all of the stuff that I do with Roll for Trouble, I am an author. I publish under the name Judy Black, and I thought it might be interesting / helpful to potentially go over writing and planning a campaign, because that project seems really big and really overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. So we're going to, potentially plan a campaign in an hour, is the goal. We'll see what happens. Announcements. So we have Tales from Cyril is back after its hiatus. So that'll be this Saturday, March the 2nd at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're still in the Feywild, so that'll be interesting. Curious to see what happens there. And yeah, okay. So here we go with this. So you can see on my board here, I've kind of written out the basics of what I'm going to go over and how I'm going to do this. I'm using tarot cards. I'm going to be using, it's the Oddity Tarot, and it's from the lovely Odd Mix Market. It's fantastic. It's one of my favorite decks. I think they're really interesting. They're really unique. They also only are, it's only 24 cards, so it's the 22 main arcana and 2 bonus cards exclusive to this deck. And for me, that's something I'm a little more comfortable with. I love tarot cards, so I have a couple of different decks. The Deviant Moon is one of my other favorites. And then also the very first deck that I ever used in D&D, because my very first D&D character told fortunes with tarot cards, is the Necronomicon D&D. So those are other cards that you can use. You can use whatever you want. If you have the Taraka cards from Strahd, you can use those. There's all sorts of ways that you can do it. And mainly the cards sort of give you what, I think it was Jung who came up with the idea of synchronicity, which is essentially your brain connecting unrelated things into a meaningful pattern, into a story. Humans at their core are kind of storytelling creatures. It's how we make sense of the world. It's how we understand what's happening to us and around us. It's why creation myths are so common. It's a very, it's a very common way that people learn about the world around them. So I think that they can be a really great starting point. They can be really intimidating, because I know it can seem like, oh my god, I have to know everything about the cards before I can use them. But you don't. A lot of decks will come with their own little intro book that gives you a bit of information. Some of them don't. The Oddity Tarot doesn't, which I don't really mind so much because I just love the look of the cards. So I think that that's really interesting, but like the Necronomicon Tarot deck, the way that it interprets major arcana cards is different than how some of the classic ones are. There's like the Rider White deck. There's a couple different ones that are sort of the gold standard, if you will. And that's sort of the interpretations that I'll mostly be using. And then I'm also just going to honestly just look at the picture on the card and extrapolate from that. But like I said, you don't have to be intimidated by it. There are a ton of really great books. One of my favorites is The Little Big Book of Tarot, which is a classic. I've had it for like a bajillion years. It's all beaten to hell and dog-eared and kind of a mess. But I love it. And what I like about it is it also has examples of spreads that you can do, or ways that you can use them. So it's a really great resource. You don't have to know everything to use tarot cards.
I'm sorry, just the cat.
I know, the cat in the background. The cat's big mad because she's not out here.
Because she fuck it up. It's fine.
So I'm going to go over what we have on the board and what I'm kind of trying to do and why I've chosen these, and then we will get officially started and see what happens. If we finish with some time to spare, maybe we'll go over some other spreads. So I'm going to no, I'll save that. Okay, so I've started with these. These 3 moments are sort of pieces of the story that I like to have for me personally in a D&D campaign. And I'm specifically going with a D&D campaign here. I actually do use my tarot cards occasionally when I'm plotting novels, but this is not how I do that, so that's a totally different discussion. So we're planning a D&D campaign. And a big part of D&D is the players, which you can't really participate in, like, they usually aren't involved in the world creation process. Sometimes they are, and that's really cool and interesting. But for all intents and purposes right now, it's you and me, Internet, and we are the DM, and we will sort this out. So, what I have here is the theme of the campaign, so sort of the big idea that I want to go over. I've talked previously about how in Turricell, I would say that the theme is love. The theme is what people are willing to do for love and how that can completely fuck things over sometimes. So that's I like to have that. It helps me sort of ground the story and what I want to tell. The setting is a huge part of D&D. Where is the story taking place? What's happening in it? What's the world look like? We aren't going to go too deep into that because that gets into world building. But the setting of the story has a big part in what kind of story you're telling. Like if you're telling a pirate story but you're in, space, that's a different story than just a pirate story on the sea. So I thought that was important to have. The inciting moment is the moment where the story sort of kicks off. It is the moment that characters come together, the plot sort of happens, everyone's in a bar, and they talk to the sketchy, Aragorn in the corner. It's the moment that the story kind of begins. So I've divided this up into 3 arcs. So each individual arc can be a couple of levels. So let's say this is a campaign for levels 1 through 9. Each arc represents 3 levels of growth for each character. And so that's a way that you can split it up. I think it works the best. It doesn't always work with reality because players like to blow up your plans. So don't be afraid to reevaluate and to come back to this. And these are just going to be really big, really wide ideas on this. We're not going to nail down specific details. So, and for this, you can add as many arcs as you want. If you only want a 1-arc campaign, whatever. If you want 7, whatever. It's up to you. It's all yours to play around with this layout. All right, so then we have our antagonist. Because most D&D games have some kind of a bad guy that's doing nefarious things that need to be stopped and where our heroes come into play. So I wanted to make sure that was also there because that also plays a big role in how a story goes and what happens in it. So this is the ultimate goal. This is what are the players after. It could be a MacGuffin, which is like a magical object, which is what it is in Turricell. It could be getting to a magical place. It could be reclaiming a throne. There are a bunch of different things. It's basically what are the antagonists and the heroes both going for? What is the goal that connects them? Because most of the time, if they're not going for the same things, they probably aren't going to bother each other too much. But, if the antagonist is trying to enslave the world and your people are trying to, create a new kingdom, those are at odds. So that's that. And then the Dark Night of the Soul, which is such a dramatic name. But that comes from Blake Snyder's Save the Cat book. And it is the sort of all is lost moment. And I think it's really important to have both the inciting moment and the all is lost moment. Because those are sort of 2 tentpole kind of moments that support the story. There are a lot of other ones, but in D&D it's hard to predict those because of player behavior. But these 2 moments, I think, are moments that the DM you can control pretty easily. Or pretty well, at least most of the time. Players are always going to player and mess your plans up. It's the nature of the beast. It's always going to happen. So, I know probably a lot of times when you see people do tarot card readings, they do the dramatic 1 card at a time. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to lay all the cards out and I'm going to flip them all over because it's a lot easier for me to start piecing things together if I can see the whole thing all at once. So, a few disclaimers. 1, I normally do this completely alone, all by myself at like 5 a.m. so no one can bother me. Because it is a super messy, super bizarro project to be done. So it's probably going to be a little bit weird and strange to watch me go. I'm probably going to talk really fast. I'm going to make leaps that make no sense probably to anybody but me, and I will try to explain them as best as I can. And I will probably mumble to myself and potentially like get up and pace around. Who knows? So yeah, I'm like real nervous about this and hoping that we can actually pull something off, but I think we can. So anybody who is in chat, if you have an idea, if you see a card that speaks to you, that gives you some sort of idea, you're welcome to share it in chat. I'm happy to have some assistance if anyone has ideas. I'll try and explain the cards. I am not a tarot expert. Usually when I do a reading, I have my little guidebook with me. I'm fairly comfortable with most of the major arcana, which is what is in the Oddity Tarot deck. But we'll see, because this is all weird and new. So we'll see what happens. But with that, I'm going to start shuffling the cards. And if anybody has any questions, you're welcome to pop them in the chat at any point. Right now is probably a good time, because I will be shuffling these cards for a little while.
5 years.
No, and I'm horrible at shuffling cards too. 2 weeks. But again, these are the Oddity Tarot. It was a Kickstarter project that I found, and I try really hard to not back all of the tarot cards I see on Kickstarter because there are so many really, really pretty ones. But I couldn't resist these because they were so nice, and they really reminded me of a book that I was working on at the time, which is my Finnegan Family Freak Show novella series. And just the style of them really reminded me of that kind of old style carnival circus look. And I loved them, and I had to have them. And it's been super great to use them. I haven't actually used them all that much yet. Because I haven't done a lot of tarot card stuff lately, because most of the projects I've been working on are already pretty sorted. And this is usually like the step one thing that I do. And I'm probably not going to worry too much about how frequently do I use tarot cards. It depends. Like, they're probably going to be out a lot more because I am finishing up most of my most of the projects that I have right now are done. They're just an edit, so at this point I don't need to use anything for like a plot outline assistance, which is mainly what I use the cards for. So I usually use them at the very, very start of a project, and since I've been working under contract for 4 books?
Yes.
Yeah. And all 4 of them are done and turned in and just waiting for edits. I haven't used them all that much. But yeah, I'm probably not going to worry that much about if things are reversed or not, because the board is set up weird anyways, because I had to face it to you guys, so I have no idea what's upright and what's not at this point. Reversed meanings are usually just generally the opposite of what the upright meaning is. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the cards and we'll get going. I hope you all are ready for this roller coaster ride we're all about to go on. And then depending on time, I maybe will do a quick spread as a D&D character builder as well. But we'll just see how fast this goes. Let's not get too crazy. So yeah. Let's put these up so I don't knock them all over the place. Alright, so like I said, I'm flipping over everything all at once, and then I will bring the cards up to the camera so you guys can actually admire them too. Come on now. Don't be difficult.
That's what I want.
Oh, I love it. Oh, these are good. Okay. Okay. Okay, interesting. Okay, alright. Okay.
Owen Wilson, all right.
No, I'm not doing an Owen Wilson. Alright, so for our theme, we have the Fool card, which is, it's the 0 card of a deck. So this is the very first card that you get. And a lot of people say that you can tell a story with the tarot cards with the first 22. And the Fool is the hero of the story as they begin their journey as a bumbling idiot. And so that's what we have for our theme. Interesting. So then we move on to the setting of the Sun, which is sort of a very ambitious card. It's a very energetic card. It's a bright and vibrant card, so that's an interesting thing. This one I love. Let me show you the sun card because it's gorgeous. They're all gorgeous. Let's be like real. So the next card, which we have for our inciting moment, which is like so perfect, I'm so happy, is the Tower card. Which, like, everyone freaks out if they get death or the devil in a deck. You should freak out if you get the Tower card, because the Tower card means shit's falling apart. That's what that card is. Out of all of the major arcana, that is the one that, generally speaking, is the oh no card. So, for Arc 1, we've got our Wheel of Fortune, which is sort of the idea of fate, of destiny, of things and cycles, things continuing on a path. And I know I flashed this one pretty quick, but it's a very nautical theme card, so I like that. I like the idea of Arc 1 being a very nautical themed thing.
We're
now,
gonna be pirates!
Susie desperately wants us to be pirates with the Salt Marsh announcement. And this one is one of the, it's not a part of the major arcana. This is one of the 2 extra cards that came with the Oddity Tarot deck, which was an everything card and a nothing card. So Arc 2, we got everything. So that's kind of awesome. I love that. Alright, so Arc 3, we have the Empress card. And the Empress is one of the, her and the High Priestess are sort of the female power couple, let's say, of the deck. The Empress is more of like a familiar nature, family, motherhood, those sorts of things, while the High Priestess is more of a like magical, intuitive, unconscious, feminine power kind of thing. So they both are great. So that's our 3rd arc. So that's interesting. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Does it matter when you drew the cards if they were supposed to be reversed versus upright for your arcs?
I'm not doing it for this,
Okay.
because just the way the board is set up and me
Okay.
having to try and show them to the camera, I'm not going to try and keep track.
Okay.
But
Just making
it's,
sure.
yeah, because I know like the Wheel of Fortune was facing the different way. So
Just making sure.
Yeah, yep, I'm not going to worry too much about it.
Okay.
Oh, hi! Odd Richard is actually the creator of the Oddity Tarot, y'all. So, absolutely go follow all of his amazing stuff because he does art streams that are really, really, really fun to be a part of, where they talk a lot about the RuPaul Drag Race, and it's super fun. So, all right, so our antagonist, we got the Magician, which is interesting and fun. So the Magician is sort of, I like to think of the Magician as if the Fool is 0. The Fool is the 0 card, and the Magician is 1. So I like to think of the Fool is the idea coming into your brain, and the Magician is the first step you take. The Magician is an action, it's a power, it's movement, it's sort of a gut guidance moment, as well as potentially being a person. So, that's interesting for an antagonist card. The ultimate goal for our group, the Hanged Man. Which I'm super amused by because I've been playing this stupid mobile game that I won't get into on the stream because it'll completely derail everything. But one of the cards that plays very heavily in that deck is the Hanged Man. So the Hanged Man usually means something about needing a release, needing a let go. Usually the Hanged Man is, well, yeah, they're hanging. They don't usually, there's not a sense of panic about it. It's sort of a, like, relaxing upside down yoga pose. All right, and then the Dark Night of the Soul is the World card, which is actually sort of the finale of the deck, if you will. And it's usually it's a very wholesome sort of card. It's sort of an ultimate conclusion. It's everything is okay. The world you have returned to the world after a long journey through darkness, through learning yourself, through isolation, through everything being lost. You are now sort of a Nirvana-esque type of moment. So that's what we got, everybody. So let's all brain. So the Fool is the theme. I think is pretty... I mean, that one, I think, seems to be a pretty easy jump, that the sort of a coming-of-age story, let's say. Let's go with a coming-of-age theme. So this is a younger group of characters, and they are just at the beginning of a lifetime of adventure. They don't really know what they're getting into. Maybe they don't even realize that they want to be people that adventure. So let's go with that as our theme. All right. The sun as a setting. So for me, this conjures up the idea of a desert world. So let's go with that. Let's go that these are young characters. Let's say they live in an isolated desert world. They don't really know very much about the outside world. Everything is hot. Everything is vibrant. It's a beautiful culture. It's not a horrible, like, awful place, but they are isolated. They live in this hot climate. Yeah, okay, nomadic. Yeah, okay, they don't want to be people. Okay, young kids out on a journey. Yeah, so let's go with a nomadic tribe that they travel around mostly in the deserts. They never stay in one place for very long. They're always moving, always out and about. A vibrant group, let's say maybe a group of travelers, of merchants, of performers, just sort of a traveling festival, if you will, maybe.
Like a circus, you would say?
Like a circus, you would say. Maybe. All right, so our inciting incident. Now, the tower gives a pretty, it's pretty much the most perfect card you could ever hope for right here. So that's super awesome. Thanks, cards. So the tower is something happens. Something calamitous happens to destroy this way of life. There's something that destroys this nomadic way of life. It destroys the caravan. It destroys their way. Something has happened that forces the characters to go from this idyllic life. Maybe a plague. Okay. We could do a plague. Okay.
A plague of beetles, you would say?
A plague or a war. Okay. Yeah, we could do something like that. All right, so let's say maybe it's a combination of things. Maybe that there is a war that is coming to this area and it is bringing with it strange new diseases. And that is meaning that the cities that they trade with, the cities that they work with, where they make their living, are no longer accepting outsiders. So suddenly this way of life is being destroyed and they are no longer viewed as happy, sunny people that bring joy into the world. They are viewed as dangerous, as outsiders. Their entire way of life is toppled. No, Susie's not mimicking stuff right now. All right. So we have young adventurers of a nomadic group that mainly lives in the desert, whose way of life has been destroyed by a war, by a plague, and they are trying to figure out what to do. So that'll bring us to, let's go ahead and go with Arc 1. So Arc 1, like I said, because of just the way this card looks, I love the idea of, they say, oh, well, the desert's borked, let's go to the sea. It can't be that,
borked.
It can't be that hard to sail.
Lol.
So let's go with that. Let's say that these fools decide that they are going to head into the sea. They are going to find a new land where their people can rebuild and can start over. So that's their mission. They have decided that they are going to find a new place for their families to live. And so they set off on the Wheel of Fortune into the sea to discover a new world and a new land to call their own. Now, like I said, this is a pretty wide thing. I'm not getting into specific details on this. That would be like if you wanted to go further in, what you could then do is do a separate reading for each arc. I shall call the new land Bob. Yes, bless you, chat. So they're hunting for the land of Bob. All right, so they continue on their way. Arc 2 is everything. All right. So this one is an interesting card. I love the look of it. I love all the sort of questions that it raises, all of the different things, all the different ways you can look at this. Hence all the different eyes. Okay, an idyllic land called Susan, but filled with unknown dangers.
Dangers, thank you. There's an M in there.
Oh,
The M and the N are right next to each other.
they are. All right. Okay, so they take this journey across the sea. It's hard, it's arduous, it's dangerous. They learn a lot about themselves. They level up to level 3, let's say, from level 1.
Woohoo!
You know, and that can be through anything. It could be they adventure, or they, you know, become part of a pirate crew, not knowing what that is. They sell their services to some merchant ship that takes advantage and leaves them stranded somewhere. I mean, there are a ton of different things you could do with that to make that a full-fledged arc, which basically is the one piece of the story. So if you think about a story as sort of like Nessie, you have all the different humps that create the wave of the story. All right, so they become PRE dates.
I'm sorry. I'm having two different conversations right now.
And they finally arrive to an idyllic, magical land that has everything they could ever want. It's perfect. It's beautiful. Now, as far as that becoming an arc, now that's where you start playing with the idea of what is a utopia and what does it mean to have a place that has everything. And now those kinds of questions can tie back into your theme. So let's liken this to life. So let's say the Wheel of Fortune is the going off to, let's say, your first 2 years of college. You have no idea what you're doing. Most of the time you're on your own, but you also have a support network around you. You're not completely tossed to the waves. So let's say that this is, you graduate and you get your very first job, and oh my god, that interview was amazing, and did you hear they have foosball in the break room and coffee? This is going to be the best job ever. And then you get in there and it's like absolutely the most hellish job you've ever been to, and it just looks really pretty on the outside. So maybe this is that kind of lesson where not everything is what it appears. Utopias are often horrible for everybody equally. Maybe not equally, but they're usually horrible for everybody in some way. So let's go with that maybe. Yeah, a tribe that doesn't like outsiders, views as outsiders. So yeah, they arrive in this beautiful land and find this group of people that's like, excuse you, this place is occupied.
But we have a flag.
You can't live here.
But we have a flag.
So the journey continues. The journey to, you know, the overall setting, the theme, all of these, they continue throughout all of these arcs until you get to the end at whichever point you want to end. We'll end ours with 3 arcs, just so that we don't draw like a million more cards because this could go on for forever. And hey, we're doing okay on time.
We're doing excellent on time, thank you. Getting to our idyllic land of Susan.
All right, so yeah, okay. Now, so we end in the land of everything of Susan.
Yep.
After the adventurers in Bob
Bountiful Susan.
on the sea. All right, so arc 3 is the Empress. So this potentially could speak to a finding of home, a finding of a place in life, of finding an answer. The Empress is a very family heavy card. So that to me speaks a lot to the Fool card and the idea that eventually you have to build your own life and you may not be able to go back to the one you came from. They're happy being pirates, a tribe that views as outsiders, ship-based murder hobos. All are valuable options, and all are absolutely options your players can take. Your players could decide, we loved being Wheel of Fortune pirates, we're never getting off of this ship. In which case, these 2 arcs, you have to figure out what you want to do with them. And if you want to completely change them, if you want to try and still make them work, only maybe it's a magical, perfect ship that they find.
Wait, then we're just remaking, like, One Piece.
Okay, they find a lost princess or empress in which the whole world started about. It's Troy. Okay, yeah, that's an option for sure. So let's think about this one a little bit more, and let's look at our last 3 cards. Because the ending is going to probably be very heavily tied with the world card as well. Alright, so all this time we haven't really talked a lot about the villain, the magician. Which is also a card that features heavily in my stupid mobile dating sim game. Reject. Alright. So the antagonist. So the obvious answer with this is the antagonist is a magician. Boom, done. Yay, quit.
You mean Jafar?
Yeah, Jafar is the villain. Not
Literally-
Janir, but Jafar.
Literally straight up Jafar. The hot Jafar.
The hot
new one.
Jafar.
I don't know why Jasmine would even say no to that.
I know, right? Alright, holding the Empress hostage, yeah. Yeah, okay.
I'm very literal. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. Alright. The ultimate goal is the Hanged Man, which, as we've said, is sort of it's a release card, but if we look at this in the image of it, it is a lush landscape. There's branches, there's flowers. It's obviously a healthy landscape wherever this person is just hanging about. The person doesn't seem concerned. They don't seem too worried. There's no tension in those legs that we can see. So it's let's say a Garden of Eden. So let's say that's what the magician and our players are both looking for. They're all looking for this place to settle. Perhaps the magician is displaced from the war. Perhaps the magician caused the war and is looking for new lands to conquer. There are a bunch of different ways that those goals can sort of collide. But I think for this, it makes the most sense to sort of read the Hanged Man in a Garden of Eden kind of sense, where it is looking for that perfect place to call home, to build a new life, to create a new story, to settle down. So, alright, let's see if the world card gives us any more help. So, like I said, this is an interesting one to, Susan's in trouble, go save Susan. This is an interesting card to have as the Dark Soul of the Night, because generally the world card is a very positive card. It's the card sort of that is sort of the culmination of the deck. It's the culmination of the journey. So in a sense, it's almost perfect that we started with the Fool and we kind of are ending with the World in our reading. So that's really interesting. Now, for me, because I tend to think in terms of gray as opposed to black and white, which I'm working on because not everybody likes that in D&D. So for me, my first thought is the dark moment of the night is that instant where you get everything you wanted and it sucks. It's not what you wanted at all. Like, you've busted your ass, you have fought so many things, you have been through so much, and you finally find this perfect place, and you're miserable. And for me, that would work as a dark night of the soul for this story. It would be hard to accomplish in D&D. That would be challenging, and it would be something that would be incredibly up to the players. And like I said, every part of this is all up to player whim. I mean, they could absolutely blow any part up at any point in time, and probably and likely will. Which is why I think these 3 cards are so important, because these 3 cards really can't be blown up. Your theme, your setting, and the moment that kicks off the story. Those 3 moments are yours, the DMs, to control. Players can't really mess with those. You can adjust them and you can change them to fit the story as you go, but those are yours, especially the theme and the setting. And yes, they can go to a different world, like in Turicel, they're going to be leaving the city they're in and heading to a mine or a swamp or a mountain that's covered in snow and stuff. So the setting is going to change, but where they start with and how that informs your story sets it differently. So, for example, if you start your story in a steampunk world, you have set it up that technology exists for the rest of the game. And the players are familiar with it. And that changes how they're going to interact with the rest of the game. So, like in Cyril, it has been set up that griffins exist and that this bond thing is possible. So we already know that. And even though we're in the Feywild where that might not be a thing, it's something that we all are familiar with. And if we run into a griffin-type creature, it's information that we have, and it shapes how your players interact with the rest of the world. So don't think that just because they're only going to be there for a short period of time, it won't matter, because the start of the campaign sets the entire tone. So I think it's really important to think really hard about where you start it and the setting that you give the players at the get-go. That's my little side spiel. Because I think it's really important, because it does impact how your players are going to interact with everything. So we can go about this in a couple of different ways. So let's go with the literal one that I've seen a couple pop up in the chat. So we have these young idiots who live in a nomadic group that's mainly in the desert. Then one day a horrible war befalls the area and their way of life is destroyed. So in order to try and save their people, they take to the seas and try and find fortune and a new world. They find something that seems too good to be true, and it turns out it is. So they must continue the quest into nature to find the woman, the empress, that can stop this war, and they can go home. Opposing them is, let's just go for it, a magician who has kidnapped the empress because she knows the location of a secret garden that is filled with magical power. And with this power, the magician can be unstoppable. They can do whatever they want. Let's say they can become a lich. Let's go full D&D here. So, the magician has kidnapped this empress and is trying to force her to take him to the Garden of Eden, where our players are also trying to find. All right? So, let's say for the Dark Night of the Soul, the players get to the Garden of Eden, and it's not all that it's cut up to be. Let's go full Dark Night of the Soul. They confront the magician, and they are unable to stop him. He drains the power from the world, and they are left in the Garden of Eden, but it has been drained. It's nothing like they thought. It is a barren and horrible place. So, Dark Night of the Soul. So, they're not willing to give up. Their goal is to find a new world, a new home, a new place for their families, for their lives. So, they continue on the quest and ultimately manage to find a new Garden of Eden. Now, what that could be is they confront the magician again, and they manage to defeat him this time. They find some new extra magical thing. For me, this would probably be, let's just do it. Let's go with a 4th arc. All right, the Hierophant. Okay, so the Hierophant he is the Pope card, basically. He is the religious male figure representing authority, representing sort of the man, if you will. All right, so the 4th arc is our players realize they can't do this alone. So the 4th arc is them gathering resources. They are forced to almost go back to their nomadic ways of life, where they go around doing favors, building friendships, creating an army, essentially. They realize they will never be able to stop the magician with all the power he has now, but perhaps the strange old druid that they have met on their journeys previously knows of a dragon that could be enlisted to help them. So now we have our 4th arc, where the players go forth, and suddenly the Pope shows up. Yep. And so our players find the Hierophant, they listen to his bargain, and they realize that while they don't want to live absolutely in the Hierophant's world, they realize that the sense of structure, the sense of community that comes from that kind of a life has its benefits, and that completely discrediting that has left them alone and isolated. I'd say that part of the Fool's journey is realizing that while it is important to be alone and to be self-reflective, it's also important to reach out to other people. We didn't get the Lover's card, but there are a lot of cards in the deck that encourage relationships. So let's go with that. So they reach out to the Hierophant in Arc 4. So now we're up to level 12, let's say. And they, with this new help, manage to defeat the Magician, save the Empress, and restore the Garden of Eden, where they can live happily for the rest of their days. Ta-da!
Woo!
Boom!
Or what the fuck ever. Yay!
But yeah, so that would be that's a fairly literal, I would say, reading of the cards. You can read them however you want to. So we could do this completely differently and, say, okay, so the Fool, this card has gems, it has what looks like sort of a trap, so maybe it's a Thieves Guild. There's a Thieves Guild that sets out to steal a MacGuffin, let's just say. Or they're setting out to kidnap a person. So let's make it Final Fantasy IX. A Thieves Guild is setting out to kidnap the princess. Their setting is a ship. They fly. It's a mechanical ship. There's a bird surrounded in a beautiful sort of cage. It's got an industrial kind of look to it. So let's say it's a ship. It's a mechanized ship. Then after they attempt to kidnap the princess, disaster. They're attacked. Their life is destroyed. Their ship is lost. So they begin a journey where they uncover a great evil. They travel the world. The princess is looking for answers. Everything is... Let's say they begin to uncover that all of the strange things that have been happening in the world are all connected. Everything is interconnected. These strange disappearances that everyone thought were unrelated, our players discover are connected. The princess suddenly realizes that she is a part of this, and that she is actually part of... So let's see here. So the Empress card here is two faces sharing one eye in a spot. So let's say that the princess is actually... Let's say this is a world that elves and humans are super separated. So let's say our princess is secretly half elf, so she is part of two worlds. And part of this problem is that these worlds are beginning to collide together again. That's why everything's connected. We're gonna leave the Hierophant out of this for right now. We still got a magician as a villain, but what this potentially could be is not a physical person, but an actual magic. Let's say there is a magic that is taking over the world. Magic is beginning to become released into the world, and suddenly everyone can do magic, and it's horrifying, and it is destroying this world very slowly. The antagonist isn't a person, it's a thing that's happening. That's a little bit more challenging to deal with as a DM, because generally you can't punch the world until it stops being magic. Like, it doesn't usually work. You can try.
That's how it worked.
You can certainly try. In DM fuck you terms. You can certainly try.
I got a 2. You tried.
You did. You tried real hard, and now your wrist is broken. Good job, baby.
We're so proud of you.
So let's say that's what's happening. So the ultimate goal is to find a way to release all this magic and to bring the world to peace. The dark night of the soul is, it doesn't happen. The world is consumed by this horrible magic, and everybody begins to be corrupted by, let's say, a horrible plague based on this magic. So what are our players supposed to do? Well, they turn to the Pope.
Hey, Pope!
Hey, Pope! Alright, let's just try one.
Hey, Pop!
Let's try one more as a different Arc 4. Hey, it's my favorite card! Death! Death and the Hermit are my favorite cards in a deck.
I don't know what that says about you.
It says a lot about me. So I love the Death card. It's gorgeous, and it, in general, is one of my favorite cards. So, okay, we can take that either super literal, in that the only way to save the world is that the world must die. There's going to just be a mass culling, and whoever survives the world will begin again. very grim, dark ending, but it's an ending.
Wow, this went real dark real quick.
It's kind of a mix of like Final Fantasy VIII and Final Fantasy VII.
I apologize if this doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I tend to start going really fast, so I'm trying really hard to keep myself slow right now. But yeah, or we can go with maybe a more literal thing, and okay, well this skull is filled with crystals, so what if the actual problem is caused by crystals deep within the earth? If we can get down there and destroy the crystals, the world will be saved. So we can go that way too. So that's two D&D plots in 50 minutes. Ta-da! No. That was really embarrassing to actually do. Those were so bad.
They were amazing. What are you talking about?
Yeah. So that's one way that you can try and campaign plan. I know sometimes it's really easy to get overwhelmed by the idea of having to plan and having to put something together, and I think that the tarot cards are a really nice way to give yourself permission to just kind of daydream. Like, at the end of the day, creating stuff should be playing. It should be playful. It should be interesting. It should be a little bit chaotic. And it doesn't have to be precious. It doesn't have to be perfect. Especially in a D&D campaign, because the players are going to blow it up anyways. And what they come up with may be way cooler than what you ever had planned. That frequently happens too. Get an earthquake, grab the crystal, accidentally, everyone dies and nothing exists anymore. The end. Yep. That works too.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. We'll just reenact.
And then I will just very quickly do one more because I mentioned doing like a character one. So this one is a 3-card spread. It's one that you can do for yourself too as a person, but I like doing them for D&D characters. It's also really fun if your DM is cool with it to actually do it in game and let the players sort of interpret their own tarot cards or have it read by an NPC or another player character. I know in the first D&D game I played, my Scion did tarot cards, and I did readings for everybody. And I did tarot card readings for all of the characters, and the DM was just like frantically taking notes the whole time I was doing it, and it was hilarious. It was great. So this is our super, 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 super simple spread. I won't bother erasing this. So it's just past, present, future. That's it. That's all you need. So past, the sun is back.
Mm-hmm.
Present is our strength. And the Fool is back for our future, which is not...
In our future, we're going to be an idiot.
I mean, sounds about right for many D&D characters.
You an idiot.
You dumb. You learn nothing.
You a dumbass hoe.
So yeah, like I said, the sun is potentially... So my first instinct on seeing this is for a D&D character is the idea of Icarus. So this is a character that was at a pinnacle and flew too high and is now crashed back down to Earth. That is their past. Whatever that means, however that happened, I don't know yet. But that's my first instinct on seeing the sun card in this instance as a past. And sometimes that's all you need to just do is just look at a card and see. And sometimes even your gut will be like, oh man, and you'll suddenly know what you really wanted to happen. So don't be afraid of listening to that too, because you're not beholden to the cards, I promise. All right, so our present is strength, which I also love. Strong. Get strong. So yeah, I mean, strength is sort of exactly what it sounds like. It's the strong card of the deck, whether that's a physical toughness or a mental toughness, emotional toughness. It is the ability to sort of keep going. So Icarus, our babe.
Hey, Badger.
Our bae
our beloved idiot
has fallen, has plummeted from a very high place due to their own hubris, and they are now finding the strength to pick themselves back up in probably a little bit of humiliation because of the fall that they've just taken. Their present is they are probably rediscovering their strength. They're rediscovering who they are, how they can continue on, sort of with a new identity. Yeah. And then for our future with the Fool, which is such an interesting card to get for the future.
Destined to repeat.
Destined to repeat it. So that could be, you could do it as a, you know, they've learned nothing, they start all over again. Or you could learn it, you look at it as they started out as a very haughty, I know better kind of person, and they end as somebody who is very curious about the world, who is sort of almost naive in how they're looking at things, which could potentially be character growth. Somebody going from a shut up, I know everything, to a, oh man, tell me more about that, I don't know anything about that. So it could actually be viewed as a tarot card signifying that there's a potential for this character to grow. The Fool is a very playful card. So potentially maybe that's what your person is looking for, is maybe they grew up in a very, you know, let's say this is a wizard. And this wizard, Kamala really didn't like that.
Wizard. It's Kamala.
It's Kamala, the dumbass wizard.
There we go. This is for Kamala's D&D character.
Bless my cat. So the D&D wizard, Kamala, flew too close to the sun. They decided that they knew how to do a magic spell that they had no business doing, that they had no reason to be doing. It completely blew up in their face and left them with nothing. They were kicked out of the academy. They were disowned by their family. They were left with nothing. And so now they are finding their present is they are finding the strength to figure out who they are without the weight of all those expectations on them. Who are they really when nobody else is forcing them to do stuff? You know, and so maybe this very serious wizard is in the process of learning how to be playful, how to enjoy life. Perhaps they suddenly, you know, perhaps they begin studying illusions and, you know, those sorts of things. They become a more playful, joyful character rather than the role that they were given at the start.
Maybe a second childhood?
Yeah, like a second childhood, a second chance at that. So that's just a really quick potential for a character. I love idea iterations. I love doing this kind of stuff. I just normally don't do it with an audience, so this has been really weird. And very disorienting.
Welcome to your life.
It's good.
So yeah, that's how to plot a D&D campaign, 2 D&D campaigns, and build a character in an hour.
Doing good.
So that's I think that's probably it for me tonight. We have Tales from Cyril, our D&D game, on Saturday, March the 2nd at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where you can get to see me play my darlingest cinnamon roll, Verity, who is too precious and pure for this world. And the next week we have DM chats with Caroline.
I am going to talk about starting with Barbarian and working my way through the Player's Handbook.
Good.
Talking about the classes and the differences between their subclasses.
Yep. All right, so we'll be starting with Barbarians and working through classes next week. Yeah, that's next week. Time is hard. And then next week we have we have River of Turicel next week, which is March the 10th.
Yes, maybe. Probably.
3 plus 7 is 10.
Yes, it is. It is the 10th.
I'm good at math.
Yup.
So, March 10th, we will have River of Turicel, which is our Southern Gothic game. Tales from Cyril is our Taldore, sort of fantasy, griffins are in the world D&D campaign.
It is
Yes,
loosely inspired off of the Critical Role Taldore campaign.
But yeah, so again, I use the Oddity Tarot from Odd Mix Market. So definitely check his stuff out. I really, really, really like these cards. I think they're a lot of fun to interpret with. And part of that is they didn't come with a book, which I kind of like because it leaves it completely open. Because like I said, some of the different decks I have, their cards mean totally different things based on what they look like than what I'm used to, and it completely messes me up every time. So yeah, that was I hope helpful. Again, I think if anything else, you should try and figure out your theme, your setting, and your inciting moment when you're starting a D&D game. I think those 3 will set the tone for the entire rest of the campaign. I think it's nice to go ahead and have the antagonist and the ultimate goal. And odds are the Dark Night of the Soul will absolutely change consistently based on what the players do. So don't be afraid to change your plan and not railroad people. But yeah, so let me know if there are any other questions about tarot cards. I'm online at Judy Blackcloud pretty much everywhere, so you're welcome to shoot me a message anytime, and I'm happy to talk it through because, like I said, I like doing this kind of stuff. And if that's the case, I'm going to stand up and walk around to the other side of the table so I can push the button and turn it off. So, with that, goodbye, Internet. And we will be back on Saturday.